Thank you for joining me for another video from Grow and Give, a modern victory garden project brought to you by CSU Extension. Grow and Give videos will help you learn to grow food, share the harvest, and keep it local. In this video about berries for the Colorado garden, we're going to learn about growing grapes. The following video is an excerpt from a live webinar on growing small fruits in Colorado. You can find the full webinar on the Grow and Give website.
So these are in the Vitis species. So we have two main types of grapes. We've got table grapes and we've got wine grapes. And really, I've always managed these the same way. But there are some differences between how they look. So table grapes are typically going to be a lot larger than wine grapes. Wine grapes tend to have a really thick skin. There are seedless table grapes. There are also seeded table grapes, but the wine grapes typically are going to have seeds in them. So just some differences in the way the fruit looks, tastes, and feels. So when you're selecting a site and preparing a site for growing grapes, you want to make sure you do the following things. You don't want to plant your grapes in your lawn. Grapes like a drier soil. They like to have drier conditions, and so your lawn irrigation is just going to not make your grapes very happy. So avoid the lawn. You want to pick a nice gently rolling terrain. A lot of that has to do with frost pockets. As you've learned from grade school, warm air rises, cold air sinks, and so you want to have that rolling terrain to let the cold air kind of roll down the side of the hill so that it doesn't pocket around the plants. A lean soil is good. They don't like a heavily amended, a high organic matter soil. They can really grow in a nice lean soil. Again, drier conditions as well. Go ahead and do a soil test before you start planting your grapes. These are a long-term plant, just like the rest of these, and that goes for all of these small fruits. Get to know your soil before you plant, and make sure you space these appropriately. So when you are planting your grapes, you're going to be planting bare root plants in the spring. And so you can see from the picture there, that's what this person's holding up. It's just a bundle of those bare rooted plants. You want to soak these roots for about 3 hours. It's just going to really help give you better establishment. I also did this when I planted raspberries. And then with the strawberries I planted, I didn't soak them for that long, but I definitely wet the roots for a good 15-20 minutes before I planted those as well. Soaking those roots before you plant these woody plants like this can just really help them establish a little better and then not go through as much transplant shock. So you want to plant your depths at the depth that they grew in the nursery. So you're going to have to look closely to find out where the roots stop and the stem starts, and try to keep it right at that level. You want to space these at least 6 to 8 feet apart. I've actually seen them even spaced further than that. You definitely have to set up some sort of trellising system immediately, because those canes will grow fast the first year, and at the end of that first year, you're going to want to already have a cane tied up to the trellis. After you plant these, after planting the strongest cane, you're going to cut, I'm sorry, there's a typo on here. You want to cut that back to 2 to 3 strong buds and remove all the other canes that do pop up around it that sucker from it. So here are some pictures of some trellis systems for you. Basically, you want to have 1, 2, or 3 tightly stretched wires that are secured firmly to some end posts. And so the picture on the far right there is kind of showing that system. You can also use arbors. Those will definitely work as well, although a little higher investment. Those are usually more used in an ornamental fashion. But either way you slice it, it has to be substantial enough to carry the weight of these vines. A cluster of grapes is pretty heavy, and so you want to make sure that it's got something really nice to grab a hold on. You can even go up higher in terms of the wires. You can grow these a little tighter spacing like the picture at the bottom there. You want to make sure you have turnbuckles at the end of the wires so that you can use a ratchet type thing and tighten those up from time to time. You don't want wires that are kind of have a slack in them. You want to make sure they're nice and taut. So a little bit about training and pruning grapes. So you can see in the picture here the different structures that, that are on a grape plant. These are usually grafted, and so you'll see that bulging graft union at the base of the trunk. Anything that comes up below that graft union, those are suckers, and those are not going to give you the same type of grape back typically. So go ahead and cut those off at the base. What you can do is choose one of the canes that come out above the graft union and kind of hold it back for insurance. This is something we used to do in Kentucky, where we would just let one little cane at the bottom kind of go in case we lost one of our main cordons. A little further up on the trunk there, you'll see the cordon. So we're training 2 canes that go outward, and then off of that cordon you get new canes and new shoots, and then what we call spurs. There's a lot of different systems. It would probably take me another 2 hours to go through all the different types of grape pruning systems and methods. So I just want to kind of touch on it here and say that the cordon training, spur pruning, is the best system for our area. And that's what you can see in both that top picture and then the bottom picture, where they have a double layer. This is called a double curtain. Just one cordon on each side would be called a single curtain system. So here you can see this is like a single curtain system, 2 cordons going off in either direction. And then off of those cordons, you'll get these spurs, and that's where you're going to be pruning to get new growth. So the cordons are the arms. The spurs are the shoots from last year that hold the buds for this year. So you can see a picture of the grape bud here. This is what you're going to be looking at, and you're going to want to try to only leave a couple of these buds per spur when you do your pruning in early spring. There's an inverse relationship that is happening between the bud count and the amount of fruit production you get. You can get pretty technical with this. There's actually mathematical formulas that have been proven through research, but just know if you just cut those spurs back to where you've only got 2 buds per spur, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So here you can see where your pruning is important. You want to actually, unlike a lot of other times where we tell you to go ahead and prune back pretty close to a bud, grapes tend to die back a lot in those cordons or those stems. So you actually want to cut these right in the middle between the nodes. You are going to get some drying out of that stem, and we just don't want it to dry down further than where the bud is. So this is the one time I'll tell you to prune right in the middle and leave a stub back. As those grapes get older, those spurs are just going to start to look more and more gnarled. And so just know that this is normal. And every year you can see that they're pruning back to 2 buds. So over time, your grapes can look, again, pretty crazy. So let's talk a little bit about some different cultivars. There's a lot of different cultivars that we can grow for table grapes here in Colorado. Concord is probably one of the most well-known and grown widely across the United States. That's your typical, your typical Concord grape jelly. Niagara is actually, I think it has a very similar flavor to Concord, but it's a white grape. St. Teresa is one that we grow here a lot. I think this one is also a plant select plant, proven to do well in our climate. I've also grown Reliance, and then there were some other ones I grew back in Kentucky. Well, I should say the university grew. I didn't grow them personally, but and those were like Mars, Neptune. So you might see those thrown around as well. I think those are better suited for the eastern United States than here. You may be wanting to grow some wine grapes. I love wine. Wine grapes are typically going to be smaller in size. The flavor of wine grapes is much more concentrated. They're probably going to be a little more sour tasting, more tart than your table grapes when they're ripe. They're going to be seeded, and then they're also, again, going to have that thicker skin. Wine grapes in Colorado, we have some issues with them. Most of these are grown on the western slope, but we do see some wine growers here in the Front Range. I was just driving down toward Boulder last week, and I saw just a small property, probably just a few acres, and they had wine grapes growing in the front yard, which was great. The hybrids are going to do better for you along the Front Range in terms of wine grapes. They're just going to be more hardy and handle our winter temperatures better. They do tend to produce the sweeter wines, and I'm going to go through a little bit more on this in the next few slides. So if you like red wine and you want to try yourself some wine grapes, here's some varieties that are recommended from CSU. Cab Franc, St. Croix, Deschonec, Chancellor, Chamberson, which I've tried Chamberson and it's very tasty. And then the Marchal Folk likes the sandy soil, and then Pinot Noir, probably not the best one for here, although a popular wine to drink. Then in terms of the white wines, we've got Aurora, Gewürztraminer, Seyval Blanc, Vidal Blanc. Vignole is I personally really like Vignole, and that's what's in the picture here. You've probably not heard of a lot of these types of wine grapes, and that's okay. We hear about the French grapes a lot, Cabernet, Merlot, Chardonnay, and it's just because that's where wine comes from Europe typically. Here in the United States, when we're growing these French American hybrids, like the ones I just named off, they're typically selling these as sweet white wine or sweet red wine or something like that. So you're just not getting exposed to the names as much. But it all tastes good, and if they grow better, I would definitely grow the hybrids, the French American hybrids, before I would grow those typical European grapes. So just closing up our grape discussion, there are some problems that we have with grapes. They do not like poor drainage. Again, they like it a little bit more dry. Check your vines at purchase. Sometimes they may not be of good quality. You might want to rogue out those ones that aren't looking so hot when you first buy them. Plant early enough. You definitely don't want to wait too late in the season. We want to make sure they have time to grow up and reach at least that first trellis wire. Irrigation is important. It likes nice consistent irrigation, but again, not over irrigating. Definitely not for the lawn situation. And then we need to make sure with our grapes that we're controlling those weeds, and then always scouting for diseases. They can definitely get a few here in Colorado.
CSU Extension has some great resources to help you grow small fruits in Colorado. Be sure to check out our Master Gardener webpage. There you'll find lots of information about many different types of small fruits, all in one place. Also look for our Plant Talk articles. These are short and to the point. We also offer CSU Extension fact sheets, which are going to give you just a little bit more information. And if you really want to take a deep dive into growing small fruits, check out our Master Gardener Garden Notes. Thank you for joining me for this video. If you have more questions, contact your local CSU Extension office or check out our website at extension.colostate.edu.